Hello, Jack Toledano here with All or None according to Jack. And tonight I have a special guest with me, Tim Durling. Uh, I'll do it this way. I still can't get the right and lefts right, but how you doing, Tim?
I'm doing good, Jack. Thank you for having me on. This is great.
Oh, you're very welcome. So, Tim and I were talking recently, and Tim recently published a book, and I'm going to put it, yes, Kansas. Let Kansas be your guide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my background so Tim doesn't have to get an arm cramp holding that book up for the whole 30 or 40 minutes, whatever whatever that we talk. But first of all, I love this cover. I'm very aviation minded, nautical minded, and I love seeing things like this. And I love art. So this is and we will get into a question about that eventually. But just to start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about the book, Tim?
So yeah, this is my third book in as many years. And Kansas is a band that I've been a fan of for a long time, a long, long time. And the reason that my channel is called Tim's Vinyl Confessions, and Vinyl Confessions is one of their albums. So it just kind of made sense. Plus, I thought it had a kind of a ring to it as a name for a channel. But my very first episode was on talking about my Kansas vinyl. So and as the years have gone on, as I started doing books, Kansas is a band that sold a lot of albums. Um, very well known. They have a couple of songs that will be perpetually in radio, classic rock radio play.
Yeah, we
But
know
yet,
them well. Yeah.
but yet they don't seem to have that status that other bands that came out around the same time as them do. Bands like Queen and Zeppelin and bands of that ilk. And I think they're every bit as good, every bit as important, every bit as um, influential. And I really wanted to have a book that just talked about their body of work, uh, all of their studio albums. I wanted to give their recent work as much consideration as I gave their classic 70s albums. And this is another panel discussion book, like my last book, my Y&T book, Down for the Count. And a lot of the same people, but there's more panelists this time and there's more albums to talk about. And um, I'm a huge fan of the band. And I think there's a lot of casual fans and there's a lot of fans that just know those one or two songs. And if I could get anybody to take that deeper look into their catalog, that's kind of the whole goal.
Oh, that's awesome because I feel like I fall kind of in the middle as we talked before we went on the air. I know more than the classic two or three songs. I may know 10 to 20. I'm most familiar, of course, with Leftoverture and Point of No Return, but
Right.
and they are a great band, but I find that they kind of I feel like they're kind of Yes's little brother in a way, because Yes seems to get more of the attention of the progressive
Yeah,
rock,
for sure. I mean, there's no question, yes, we're an
which
influence
is
on this band.
unfair because they're a
Yeah.
great band. Yeah.
And also they're American and
Yes.
there aren't, American prog bands. There just aren't as many, well-known ones, right?
Right.
Um,
Yes.
they have a unique sound that, combines a lot of different things I think it's because they are from, not just the US, but Kansas. They're from a state that's not known for a musical scene, right?
Yeah.
You never
Oh,
hear
yeah.
people talk
Without a
about,
doubt.
oh yeah, that the Topeka scene. You never hear about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I mean,
so within Kansas, you get the prog, but you also get a little bit of boogie rock, you get a little southern rock. As the 80s came along, you get a little AOR. um,
right.
you get stuff that's a little heavier, plus they've got the violin, which makes them sound utterly unique. But
Oh no,
I think there's
but I think it lends a great extra sound for them.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it's great. It's an immediate identifier when you hear that come in.
Yeah.
um, and I just think there's a tremendous amount of um, varied sounds. There's really something for sort of every taste. I mean, I bet you I could name, if anybody's into rock music at all from any era, I could probably name them one Kansas album and say, go listen to this one. You might like this one.
Okay.
So, but you talk about, not being as deep. The fact that the first song that you mentioned when we were talking was The Pinnacle, that
Yes,
tells me, a little bit, you go a lot farther in than just having a best
I
of.
try,
So
but
that's
having
fantastic.
a channel, there is so much damn music that I have to try and absorb. And I've said this since I started this channel. I just can't absorb it as fast as my good friend Pete Pardo can. But yeah,
Yeah, I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he keeps
yeah,
up. But I've been on Sea of Tranquility talking about Kansas too. More than happy to do that. Pete's one of the contributors to this book, one of the many contributors.
awesome.
Did a great job, and everybody just stepped up. But I've got people in here that are relatively new Kansas fans, and
Oh,
I've got people that have been into the band from the beginning, and then I've got people that are kind of in the middle. So there's no wrong way to listen to something, and you know you just every catalog, there's not enough hours in the day. You just can't explore every big catalog. But sometimes if somebody was curious, I really wanted a book so they can just, I really want to know about this particular album. You open the chapter and you read about that album. It's
mhm.
all here for you. There's all the 15 Kansas studio albums are here, presented in such a way that I think by reading the questions and reading the panel answers, you get an idea of what sort of album we're talking about. And like I said, their two newest albums that came out in 2016 and 2020
Mhm.
are as good as anything that they've done.
Oh,
And
that's good to know.
I think that's one of the reasons I was really inspired to do this. If they had either stopped making new music, which some bands do, like Foreigner or Aerosmith, or if they'd put albums out that really weren't that good, I don't know if I would have been as inspired to make them the subject of a book. But
Right.
to
Yeah.
me, there's an incredible amount of consistency. So yeah, I think that it's a catalog that just gives more and more rewards the more that you get into it. And you turn around and, oh, I don't have this album, you listen to that, oh, I like this one too, it's a little different, but I like this one too. Just a band I've long
Well,
admired, and really happy with how this came out.
well, I have pen and paper, and at the end of this episode, I'm going to ask you to give me a couple of homework assignments other than the two albums that I mentioned,
I'm glad to do
Leftover
it.
and Point of No Return. But
Awesome.
okay, so here's I have a few questions that I have jotted
Sure.
down, and in no particular order. So how does one go from writing a book about Y&T to a band like Kansas? But you already answered Kansas, but how does one that's a big Kansas fan write a book about Y&T?
Y&T are one of my all-time favorite bands,
Good.
and I
Okay.
think that they should have been a huge rock band. I think they had the
Right.
potential to be every bit as big as a band like Van Halen. I just think they had everything going for them, and
Right.
I never understood how they sort of fell between the cracks. Was it record label? Was it you
I'm
know?
most familiar with the album Mean Streak, and in fact, we were driving back from City Field last night as I'm dropping Davy off. I put the song Mean Streak on just because I love the way it lampoons married life, and I've been married for a long time, and it's like every bit of that song is true. It feels
It's
like.
it's really funny that I love the fact they did a song that was that heavy and that driving, and you'd expect it to be the sort of and no disrespect at all, but you'd expect it to be the sort of Dio sort of demons, and
Mm.
but it's not. It's about a domestic spat
Oh,
essentially,
but
and
it's so true. The
it's such a
lyrics are so poignant. It's funny.
it's such a massively
Yeah.
wonderful hard rock song.
I mean,
But I'm
I hang
I'm
out
going to
with a
be
bunch of
honest.
guys, and all we do is talk about, problems in our marriages and stuff. So there you go.
I don't know yeah, that probably sort of became an anthem for the downtrodden, or the henpecked. But I just think they're a phenomenal band, and they should have broken big. And they're
Right.
never, as far as I know, to this day, there's never been another book written about Y&T. So that was pretty much a no brainer once I decided to do that. And that was my second book. My first book was about 8 tracks of all things.
that I'd like to talk about with you. You know, maybe in a follow-up episode. But that
I'm
would be
more
awesome.
than happy to do. I'm very proud of that book.
Awesome.
That one's a coffee table book. It's a visual treat,
I
and I
might have
can't
to
take
get my
credit for how the
hands on that
visuals look.
first. Yeah, but
Yeah,
yeah, before I have you on. But that would be awesome. Tell you about my very limited 8-track experience, but that would be cool. So let's talk about the. Well, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share and give people a closer look at the book cover, if we can get there. Where is it? Screen. Um, we'll get there. Okay. So I went to Amazon, of course, and pulled up your book. And what we're going to do is just do a little gloss over and let people see it a little closer. I just think the detailing is just wonderful in this art. Could we talk about the cover art a little bit?
sure. Yeah. So this cover art was worked on by a very good friend of mine named Matt Phillips, who has a company called Go North Design. His logo is on the back of the book, and
Okay.
he's been instrumental in helping me with all three of my
I'm
books
sorry.
until
What
they're
did you say his name was again?
Matt Phillips or
Oh,
Matthew.
okay.
Yeah. And so what you're looking at here, it is AI assisted, it with a lot of tweaking on Matt's part. This was not the first thing that AI spat out, but I
Oh,
said I wanted some very specific imagery in here, and diehard Kansas fans will look at this front cover and the back cover, and there are icons from most of the Kansas album covers. I mean, there were certain things that had to be on there as far as I'm concerned. The ship,
right.
like the Point of No Return cover, the violin,
Yep.
sort of like Left Overture. There's a bird on there from Summer
Right.
for
Yep.
America. And then there's other things that the more you look, the more you see in it. I really wanted to do one of those type of collage covers, something like like the Best of Kansas in and of itself, but also Rush's Exit Stage Left, which is one of my favorite Hugh Syme covers because it's got imagery from all of the previous albums to that point, and it's fun being able to pick them all out.
Right. Oh,
And yeah, I think visually it's very striking, and I really like how it came out. And another thing that I did with it, Jack, that I don't think you can see on the Amazon, so I'll hold my copy of the book up.
okay. So
Uh,
I'll stop sharing first.
yeah.
So,
Um, and I really wanted to do this for the diehard music, physical product collectors. The Pete Pardos that we all know that have the ton of CDs, right? Anybody that bought CDs from bands that were on CBS Records would immediately recognize the spine of this book
yep. Yeah.
because I said, you know what, Kansas were on CBS for a good chunk of their career. I want red on white, and I want it in the impact font, which is what the CBS CDs looked like.
Not to
And I really,
mention, it's very easy to pull off a bookshelf because it's all there.
yeah,
Yep.
it stands out for sure. But I really
Yeah.
wanted to have that look alike to the old CDs, whether it's
Very cool.
Aerosmith or
Yeah.
Journey or Boston or Blue Oyster
Yep.
Cult or whatever, or Kansas. And I've had a few people come to me and say, you know what, I literally have had the book for about a week. I just noticed the side of it, the spine of it. So that's great when that
Very
happens.
nice. Okay, so we're going to go in a slightly different direction. So I did some research and I watched a few episodes to try and formulate my approach to this episode. And I was very pleasantly surprised to see another good longtime buddy on an episode with you by the name of Steve Fleck. So how did you end up hooking up with Steve? I'm curious.
He was recommended to me by Pete Pardo.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and Steve's super nice to talk to.
Yes.
He's a great contributor to the book, and he's also done. I'm trying to think. I think he's done 6 of my Kansas deep dive episodes on
Awesome.
my
That's
YouTube
great.
channel. I think he and I have done the first 6 studio albums. Yeah, I think
Okay.
I wrote that. So,
Really
and
nice.
Steve knows the catalog inside and out. So yeah, his contributions were very much appreciated. You know,
Yeah.
there's people that I've talked to in the course of doing this book that I thought I knew a lot about Kansas, and I guess I do, but there's people I've talked to that are way, way, way more knowledgeable about the
Yeah.
band than I am, and can name you tour dates and who they toured with and
Oh yeah.
where they played, and that's awesome, you know. And
Yeah.
but someone was just curious and heard a couple of albums, as do you want to come on and talk about it? And they said, yeah. I said, that's just as valid to me. So
Yeah.
um, and oftentimes it's the newer listeners will hear something that I've heard 1,000 times
Yeah.
and notice something that I've never noticed before. So do you notice that drum
There's
break here kind of sounds
yeah.
like this and that
Well,
sort of
there's
thing?
definitely some validity to the newer listeners. I mean, they can add just as much passion. Like here's a very quick story. One of my first episodes with Pete on Sea of Tranquility, we did a top 10 of the German metal band Accept, which I love. I'm more of a metal guy, but
Yep.
so I
There's another band the CDs would look like this.
yep. But the funny thing is, and I love both singers. You know, I have no preference, Udo or Mark Tornillo. I love them both, but I just happened to pick 7 out of the 10 songs of Mark Tornillo, and this one guy was bitching up a storm. Like, how could you do that? And this guy's a Johnny Come Lately, and what does he add to your show? But I'm like, that's the beauty of it. It doesn't have to be somebody that's been a fan for 50 years. Somebody who's been in 5, 10 years might have just as much good insight. So,
Yeah,
which is the point.
it's just as valid. You know, all opinions, we all hear stuff differently, and you know, uh, yeah, sometimes people might, how can you not say it's from the first X amount of albums? Well, those are good, but I like the new ones better. So yeah,
Meanwhile, I rated one of the Udo songs number 2. I mean,
yeah,
so there you have it. But that's the fun of running these channels. You're always going to get a little contention here and there, but it's all in the fun of things. So here's a question. Would you say that Kansas is the, the premier American prog rock band?
um, I guess it depends on your definition of prog. Like if you're talking old school prog,
Mm-hmm.
probably, you know, they're probably the longest running, the most successful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, but you know, a generation removed would probably say, you know, they might say Dream Theater's the ultimate American prog band, and I like them too.
Yes.
Um, but
Although I think they fall more into prog metal, and
yeah, and yeah,
I am
that's
a big
true.
fan of prog metal. So
Yeah, but if you're just talking strictly prog, but you know, one thing I do like to mention to people, and you mentioned Yes, and I like Yes too, but I'm a relatively new Yes fan compared
interesting.
to how
Oh,
long I've been into Kansas. Yeah, yeah.
wow.
Long story, but Kansas on the whole are a much heavier band. You know, and
Yeah.
that doesn't mean they're a heavy band. It means they're heavier than
Right.
say
I
a
get
band
that.
like Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Here's a question that I don't think anybody will have thought to ask you. So, my wife, myself, and my niece, we're planning a trip in August out to Eastern New York State, Western New York State, and we're going to do a stop at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Uh, what would you have me tell them or ask them about the band Kansas
At the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Why aren't they in it?
Yeah. Anything else?
Um, see number one. I mean, uh,
Yeah.
the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a joke, I think, because they don't induct rock acts. They
Yeah.
stopped. You know, if you're going to induct, there should be a pop Hall of Fame. There should be a hip hop Hall of Fame. I
Yeah.
don't understand. I don't understand why bands have to wait years and years, and even within rock bands, there's some
Yeah.
bands. Kansas would have been eligible since 1999. I
Yeah.
believe it's 25 years since the release of your first album, and that would place Kansas being eligible now for 25 years. for as many years as they've been eligible. They're twice, they're on their 50th year as a recording band now. And yet you've got bands, like Nirvana and Guns N' Roses, and the first year they're eligible, or maybe the second year they get right in. I don't understand that. I think that there should be an order to it.
I'm miffed that they haven't inducted bands like Jethro Tull and Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Pete and I went, and I think it was 2016. We saw it was the year Deep Purple and Chicago were inducted. Also, Cheap Trick was inducted.
Yep.
You know what? I like them, but I don't think they should be ahead of a bunch of these other bands that are not there.
I like Cheap Trick well, and I'm just glad to see bands I like it. And I think it was a huge turning point when Rush got in, because then it was okay.
Yes.
They're starting to, but you know what? And I love Rush. They're like my, Rush and Y&T are probably my favorite bands.
I love Rush too.
I know that's an odd combination, but
right.
But to me, it doesn't make any sense that Rush went in before Yes, because there would be no Rush without Yes and a bunch of other bands that came before them. So it's all backwards. Like there's bands like, I can't believe Bad Company isn't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I can't believe Boston. If Boston put nothing else out but their first album, they should still be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So yeah, it's a backwards system, and it seems like it's who you know. But Kansas stand as good a chance as any band from their era, because they have now sort of transcended generations. A lot of that has to do with Carry On Wayward Son being in the TV show Supernatural. That's how my children, who are in their early 20s, found out about them. They never would have heard them, I mean, other than my collection, but there's nothing they would have known by them on their own, discovering it on their own. And so I think that, just on the basis that they've got those sort of two evergreen songs, Carry On and Dust in the Wind, it could happen. I'm not going to hold my breath, but it definitely should happen. There are bands that have sold way less albums than they have that are already in. Like, I like Cheap Trick, but I don't think Cheap Trick have sold as many albums as Kansas.
No, not by and it's just the complexity of Kansas's music. I think that should be a consideration as well.
I think that's more of it. For years that was a detriment. They didn't seem to think that if you could, and I've never bought into that argument that if you're really proficient at your instrument, then you can't play rock and roll. I've never bought into that. I'm not the type of guy. I never understood the whole punk thing. I never understood the charm of it. To me, I know people love it and like the raw aggression of it, but to me, it sounds like let's suck on purpose.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. And people are going to be like, yeah, what does this guy know? Well, I know what I like.
Something to that. Yeah.
I know what I like. And Kansas were never a hip in band. They were never a Rolling Stones critics' darling. They were one of those bands that nobody liked them except their fans. Right. And most of my favorite bands fall into that category. So,
well, you want to find something really interesting. So this, my studio here, this doubles as my wife's office when she works at home, and sometimes and my office is out in the living room. So sometimes we'll come in here to talk. And one day, and I got her a Spotify account. She was actually listening to Kansas. I was shocked. I'm like, you're actually listening to Kansas? And she's like, yeah, why wouldn't I? Because she's not a prog head by any means. Well,
that's just it.
Or a weed head, as they might be called, yeah.
Yeah, they've got songs that have a broader appeal. They've got stuff, like I said, in the 80s that has more of an AOR thing. And, whereas some might look at that as a detriment, I look at it as versatility.
Without a doubt.
Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with trying to expand your audience, and move out of your lane once in a while and try to gain an additional audience. And look at Rush. They've transitioned every few years. They went from very hard rock, metalish to more prog rock and to more of an AOR type, as you mentioned, album oriented rock.
Yeah, and with you know, with Kansas too. I mean, they had their shot in the '80s when they had Steve Morris on guitar, and you know, the album they put out in '86, which was called Power, I think is just a great '80s rock album. And to me, when I hear that album, that should have done for Kansas what 90125 did for Yes,
Yeah.
sales wise, but it
Yeah.
just didn't happen. It just
Right.
didn't happen. So
No, that's the way the cookie crumbles. I mean,
yeah.
look at
Yet they're
Judas.
still out there. They're
Yeah.
still on the road. You've got
I mean, look
the
at
two.
Judas Priest with Turbo.
Yep.
Same
And
thing.
some people will say that's when I get into them.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm. I'm a big Priest nut, by the way. I don't know if you knew that, but yeah.
I think I did. Yeah.
Okay. Um, any future books planned?
Absolutely. I'm not going to disclose any right now, but I do want to do. You know, I'm kind of seeking out bands that I not only that I like, but that I know have fan base
Mm,
that don't seem to be served by the book community. Like somebody said to me, "You should do a Kiss book," and I like Kiss. I'm a huge Kiss fan.
right.
What the heck am I going to write about Kiss that hasn't already been written?
I
What am I going to write about
agree.
Rush
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
hasn't already been written? I'm not
Yeah.
interested in that. I have no passion for that. There are great books out there already. I guess
Yeah.
what I do is I kind of write the books that I would just as soon buy if they existed and
Right.
not go through the trouble of putting them out.
It's a
And
very
that's been
good
the story
point.
for all
Yeah.
three of my books so far. I perceived that there was a deficit, so I filled the deficit.
Wow, that's a very good point. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So, yeah, we're looks like I've run out of questions. So, if there's anything else you want to share, otherwise, I'm ready to put pen to paper. Give me some suggestions.
Oh, for Kansas albums.
Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, the obvious, you know, and you said you're well familiar with Left Overture and Point of No Return. And here's the thing about those albums. I will get to your answer here in a second. Those are the big selling albums. Left Overture currently sits at about 5 million in the States. Big album, really
Okay.
big. Point of No Return's at 4 million. I mean, these are big selling albums.
Right.
Now, each of those big songs are on those albums. And you
Yes.
can certainly tell what a hit single will do for your album sales, okay? Because everything else is like single platinum or gold
Hmm.
that of their certified albums. Those albums are not atypical of their sound. They're totally Kansas albums. They're totally representative of their overall sound. So there's nothing wrong with hearing those albums if you've only had the best of or just heard the couple of songs. Those are as good a starting point as any. But for you, I'm going to suggest a couple of albums from their latter day period. The
Okay.
first one I'm going to suggest is their newest album, which is 2020's The Absence of Presence. This is, I think, is the best album to come out in the last, I don't know how many years. I've listened to it so many times. I think it's fantastic. Now, the current lineup only has two original members left. There's drummer Phil Ehart and guitarist Richard Williams. But the current lineup they have is so good, so talented, and they can take anything from any album, play it live, and it sounds good. The other album I'm going to suggest is one that totally got forgotten when it came out because it was on a small label. It came out in 1995, and it's called Freaks of Nature. And if you lean towards the heavier stuff, I think you might be surprised with a lot of the tracks on this album, Jack. There are songs on here like
Awesome.
Fathom 4, like the title song Freaks of Nature, Cold Gray Morning. Some pretty rocking stuff on that album.
Cool. Wrote it down, folks. You can't see it because of my spotlight, but wrote it down. Okay, so there anything else you'd like to plug or share before we say goodnight to everybody?
Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity to promote my book. All of my books are available on Amazon. All anyone has to do is just type my name in, and the first three things they should see are my three books: Unspooled, An Adventure in 8 Tracks, Down for
Hmm.
the Count, Y&T Album Review, and Let It Be Your Guide, the Kansas Album Review. And go check out some Kansas if you've only kind of been on the peripheral and you've always been curious. It's a wealth of great music waiting.
Okay, that's very good.
Oh,
You know.
and like and subscribe to my channel, Tim's Vinyl Confessions.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Yes. Please do. And please also subscribe to my channel, All or Not According to Jack. That's actually my new business card, by the way. And if you look closely, you'll see. And this wasn't even my idea; it was my printer's idea to put the vinyl grooves in the actual
Oh
business.
yeah, yeah, I can see that. That's cool.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, I love it. It was a great, great way to promote myself. And on the back, he actually, what I did was I put I put the URL, but so instead, what he did was he put the QR code. So
Okay.
everybody has a smartphone these days. They'll
Yep.
take you
Just
right
scan
to
it.
it.
Take you right there. Yep. Yep.
Yep. It's the coolest thing. So again, thank you so much for your time, Tim, and it was a pleasure talking Kansas with you. Uh, and again, it was a pleasure getting a little bit out of my lane for a change. To talk about another great band, and I've been trying to get into Kansas bands like Kansas and Blue Oyster Cult, but it's just been so hard. Between trying to maintain my top metal by year and having to listen to a lot of albums there and I have some other side projects with a few other people to do ranking the albums. So but before you do that you have to listen to everything. So
Yeah.
but all in due time. Nothing to do but listen to music every day of our lives, right?
Yeah. Could be worse.
Yep. Well, okay. Thank you so much, Tim. And I'm going to say goodnight to everybody and have a pleasant tomorrow. Bye.